Hello. So a bit of a mare game week just ended. Fittingly, before Easter, it was decided with Jesus finding himself in the end of the cross as the final game of this, as the final big game of the season was decided by, well, not very much actually. And we were after the 2-2 draw between Liverpool and Man City. I'm recording early just because I'm off the next couple of days, as it's my birthday on Tuesday. Yes, I'm 33 years old, getting on a bit. But hey, it's Sunday record. Why not? Let's go ahead. I'm joined by Harry again. You're right, mate. It's been, 6-0. You're going to be in good spirits after that, aren't you? After your team found its shooting boots after a bit of a anemic period.
Yeah, FPL game week basically being the Southampton of that game, and then my club being the 6-0 win. So one very good result and one absolutely dreadful result. But looking good for Chelsea. I think it's looking fairly reasonable for us now to not even, the old race of no one wants top four. I think we might just do well enough not to get into that. So yeah, not bad. A good weekend for Chelsea, definitely. Welcome back to all the listeners. We are Who Got the Assist. You can find Tom at WGTA_FPL, and you can find me at FPL_Harry. On this week, we'll do usual intro stuff, mini league update quickly, and a review of how we got on. But yeah, as I've mentioned, not great for me, and I don't think equally as good for you, Tom, as well. We'll focus mainly on game week 33, how to approach it, whether it's United, whether it's captaincy, or whether we should be using our free hits, and a few key transfer targets to talk about along the way as well.
Yeah, cool. I mean, there'll be no break, I think, this time. I think we'll go after general updates, just straight through. So a lot of listener questions, understandably, we're all about double game week 33, as Harry mentioned. It's not like a usual strategic sort of thing. I think it's just good to focus on the tactics, given how the season has gone, and given about the fact that, everybody's been thinking about for game week that's coming up. Let's move into the main kind of game week update. We've just finished, haven't we? And it's not been the best one in the world, has it, Harry? I mean, how have you gotten on so far?
48 points all out. I got 4 from Trent, 5 from Salah, 12 from Kulusevski, and 20 from Kane. So no Son, no Rafinha for his first double-digit haul of the season, and his only second double-digit haul in his time at Leeds. What an incredible weekend that was. And then Rudiger as well. But 48 points set me down from 25 to 37k, sitting 49 points outside the top 10k now. It's not impossible with 20% of the season still to go, as Andy Martin has just said, but still feels like a bit of a push to get there now. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too much better for me. I got 53 this week. A Ramsdale in goal with a 1 pointer, annoyingly. I think, looking back at the last podcast we spoke about the chokers, and I think that Arsenal perhaps are falling into that category a little bit, just for key injuries here and there. And I don't really know how else to describe it. Hopefully it's just a blip, and hopefully we're going to come back next week in double game week, Southampton and Chelsea. It's Southampton, Chelsea, isn't it? But Ramsdale just 1 point at the back. Got the really good clean sheet in the 6-0. I think before I move on to the next man, we had a question from FPL Fairy, who asked how our pronunciations of Doherty have come along. And Harry, how's yours going after a little while?
I still know better. Matt Doherty. I still don't think I'm anywhere near it, but I don't know what it's meant to sound like. So I'm just going to keep going. If I say it the same enough times, someone will tell me that it was right.
Yeah, I ended up assailing a lot of Irish people that I know, not just kind of randomly. Obviously, I know them all for FPL, with my pronunciations. And this is the best one. This is the one I got sign off on from Anthony, FPL Stag of this parish once. His significant other said that this is the 100 I got vaguely right. He told me to keep it musical, so I decided to sing along with loads of Irish songs. And this is the best one that I got. Not old Irish songs, obviously, newer ones-ish.
Again. So we find ourselves in the same old mess, singing drunken lullabies. Matt Doherty!
I can only apologise to every Irish person listening. But yeah, he got 1 point this week, and that you can't legislate for that, can you? I mean, a guy coming off after a few dirty tactics by Villa. I think there were 2 very, very heavy tackles very early on that kind of did for him. Hopefully, it's an impact injury, and we'll see whether he's able to be started next week. Alongside him, Andrew Robertson got a 0 pointer. Trent got a 4, which was probably a little bit pleasing actually, because I was looking, it was between him and Harvey Barnes, who I started this week. I thought, Robertson's he's been performing fairly well recently, so maybe Alexander-Arnold should be the one who's benched and Barnes would play. But Sam Martin, Leicester ICK and Leicester correspondent for Planet FPL, said that he thought that Harvey Barnes could be due a rest just because he'd been performing a little bit poorly recently. He wasn't very good in the Europa Conference League. So I kind of went along with that, benched him, played Trent, and I'm 3 points better off for it. So, hey, thanks, Sam. That's a great 3-pointer there. In midfield, Salah, Martinelli, Saka, Kulusevski with a 12-pointer, and up front, Weghorst with a 1-pointer. I think he's definitely a top dog for me, that's for sure. And Harry Kane with a 20-pointer. He was very, very close to getting 2 bonus, wasn't he? But got yellow cards in the 92nd minute, something like that. Knocked him out of all of the consideration. So I think I'm kind of around basically where I was before. It's one of those weeks where I'm not really looking at it too much, to be honest with everybody, just because, you can't really do it to yourself. You've had a bit of a mare week, that's for sure. And looking into the mini league update on that note, up top, it's still Hakon Magnusnes. He got 77 points this week, captaining Kane, but still 77 is pretty damn decent. In second, it is Joakim Lengroff still as well, 62 points for him. In third, Lucky Prophet, Troy Hope. These are really good scores, to be honest. They feel like a mare week for me, but Troy Hope has gotten a green arrow. I think he was 6th or 7th last week, so that's pretty damn decent. In fourth is I Love Lamptey, Brett Taylor, 65 -4. He captained Bruno, as did Joakim actually, which obviously didn't work out as well as it probably could have done. In fifth, it is what it is. Steve Jones up from 10th. 80-pointer for him. Where are these points coming from? Seriously, I don't get it. Maybe that's why I'm not in the top 10 of the WGTA mini league, that's for sure. In sixth, James Coe, Bruno, number 1, 68 points. In seventh, Ryan Mackey's up from the teens, 84 -4 with a Son captain. He and Troy both went for Son this week and did very, very well. Coincidentally, Nick, WGTA Nick, of course, who I'm sure would have tried to come on this pod just to bask in his own glory this week if he could have done. Also captain Son this week, and he was very, very happy on our Slack, that's for sure. In eighth, down from 6th, it is Chris Turner, the brothers Grimsby, 65 points this week. In 9th, going nowhere, it's Stranger Ings, Lucas H, 71 points. And down from 5th to 10th, it's the special one. I don't know how to pronounce it. Oisin? Owen, I'm going to say. Okurwan, 58 points this week, while everybody in the top 10 of the mini league. And onto the market forces finally. We're all shaping up, aren't we, for double game week 33. It's all in the works, but it looks like a couple of performances from a few players who've done well this week are top of the agenda for a lot of managers.
Yeah, so actually only one of the top 5 most transferred in players has a double game week this coming game week 33. Madison second most, 60,000 transfers in. You can understand why, with sort of outperforming Barnes over the recent game weeks, why he's up there being the second most transferred in. But if we look again at the ones, we've got Son and Kulusevski. Again, their run in for the season, even without a double next week, is very nice, and you can understand why people who maybe don't have triple Tottenham are making sure that they do for this run in. Mount up there again. Yes, Chelsea's run-in is good. And if they get knocked out of Europe, there's a chance that their double game week comes in slightly earlier than maybe 37, which could be playing on people's minds. But I imagine it's just Mount did points this week, so he's being transferred in. And then Tony, number 5, again, did quite a few points this week. So 5th most transferred in.
Yeah, and I think maybe the transfers out as well. I think maybe towards the end of the game week, if we did the end of the week, if we did this and we looked at it and kind of thought, well, what's ahead, it would make a lot more sense in terms of the transfers in. But in terms of transfers out, they are players who perhaps haven't done that many points, but equally, you'd be kind of wondering in a few places. So the top 2, it makes a lot of sense. Coutinho, his sales continue to increase. 116,000 this week, again, near the top of the transfers out. 116,000 out. Tierney looks like he's out for the season, sadly. 70,000 transfers out. In third, it's Saka, 42,000 transfers out. He does have the double coming up, Southampton and Chelsea. maybe a few managers have seen enough and thought, you know what, I'm going to use him as a way to pivot to Kulusevski, a way to pivot to Mount or something like that. Does seem a bit reactionary. In fourth, it's Mo Salah, 40,000 transfers out. A lot of managers have seen enough of Mo Salah. Just kind of thinking, maybe caught on the Twitter stream saying, yeah, you know, Salah's rubbish now. It's all over for him. I'm not sure about that. And finally, Emmanuel Dennis still being sold somehow. I guess there was a really, really high ownership at one point at 35,000 transfers out. I mean, what do you make of that kind of Salah discussion last couple of weeks, Harry?
I still back him to do very well. And if you look at their run-in, Manchester United in game week 33 is still a good fixture, I'm hoping, and probably going to end up starting all three of my Liverpool assets, which I'm very happy with. I do not mind that at all. Everton, Newcastle, Tottenham, Aston Villa, Southampton, Wolves. And to be honest, I think if they want to win the league now, they need to win every single game between now and the end of the season. Looking at Manchester City's run-in, they have Brighton, Watford, Leeds, Newcastle, West Ham, Wolves, Aston Villa. Chances are Manchester City are going to drop a maximum of 3 points between now and the end of the season. So Liverpool need to make sure that they do everything in their power to make sure that they are pushing them right to the very end. So I think he'll, step back up. He looked good today. I think he was pretty lively, especially in the second half of the sort of first half and then into the second half. I think he looked good. I still can't back selling him, although a lot of the people he's being sold for, Kevin De Bruyne scored again. Son scored a hat-trick. I think Bruno is probably not the one I would go with now, given the way Manchester United is performing. But De Bruyne, Son, Salah, Kane, plus the premium defenders, you can only really own two of them, which I'm finding quite difficult looking at my wild card next week. I still think Salah and Kane come out on the top for the two of them, but would you squeeze, De Bruyne in there instead of Salah, or Son instead of Salah, or is Salah number one out of those for you?
I don't know. I mean, it depends, as it probably seems to always depend at this stage of the season on where you are and whether you can bring Salah back in. For me, he was never going to be leaving, and I think that that, as you said last week, his data hadn't diminished that much before he went to AFCON and since come back from AFCON. And for me, I think that it's very difficult, at least from a FOMO point of view, and Mo puts the Mo in FOMO idea to be getting rid of him. But I can completely understand why people have been selling him, especially if you're looking to free hit in game week 33 and wildcard in 34. So wildcard him back in makes a lot of sense to just kind of go for those upside gains. And I understand it. I really, really do. Right, let's take a break there. Move on to looking at game week 33. Cool. So we're back and we're into the main topic this week, which is how do we approach FPL double game week 33? As mentioned earlier, we're going for a bit of a tactical approach this week, not really WGTA, but super necessary given the time of year, everything that's happened, the fact that we've missed so many games and the doubles can come thick and fast. And every week, I think there's an open question about how we approach it, what we do. And it is, of course, all down, as I said earlier, or inferred earlier, to where you are with your team, what chips you've got left, etc., etc. And there's lots of midweek tomfoolery to happen as well. So Chelsea's unwinnable tie, according to Thomas Tuchel, versus Real Madrid. I really liked, I don't know, it's maybe just me, but I love the fact that he was saying, oh, I ate a lot of chocolate during the fact I was watching it. I thought that was really cute. It was cute. It kind of humanized that kind of character a little bit, just because he's obsessed with football. Yeah, we like it, but there's always got to be some sort of release valve for these people, and him being like, oh, I had to eat a lot of chocolate, have a walk around and come back before I could watch it again. I thought that was really kind of nice. It was just really kind of heartwarming to see that somebody like that has his weakness. We got him, we got them, versus Real Madrid. We've got City versus Atletico, Liverpool versus Benfica, and Leicester and West Ham in Europa, whatever ties as well to come. So, I mean, let's have a look at free hit in 33 at least. I mean, you put together a free hit, didn't you, just before we started chatting? And how does that kind of look? It's a bit difficult, isn't it? I know there's a lot of people who are on it this week. I mean, how would you do it, Harry, if you were going to be putting together a free hit this week?
Yeah, I think the big thing for a lot of people on free hit is the teams that have a double are not the teams that we necessarily trust and want to buy into. But the teams with a single only have a single, of course, but they're the ones that we would trust more and have, in theory, better fixtures. My free hit draft looks a little bit like this. So I've got Schmeichel in goal. I'll leave the subs out of it. I've got Cancelo, Shah, and Alex Telles in defence. My midfield 5 would be Salah, Saka, Barnes, Maddison, and Bruno Fernandes, with Harry Kane and Chris Wood up front. So I've got 2 single game week players, 3 with Cancelo, Salah, Kane. So I've got cover from Man City, Liverpool, and Tottenham in there. And then I've just gone with what I think are potentially the highest upside in some of those doubles. You've got triple Leicester in there for very nice. I've got double Newcastle in there as well, and then double Manchester United. Manchester United is an interesting one. Again, given their performance against Everton this week, I really can't but get behind backing a third one. We'll wait and see if Ronaldo gets any retrospective ban for his behavior after the full-time whistle at the weekend. I think it's unlikely, but I still think that 3 of them, given their double, is difficult. It's difficult to get behind. Norwich looked pretty good today, so I don't necessarily think I'll be expecting a massive win given the way that they performed in against Everton, Manchester United, and then it's Liverpool away again. If I'm saying Liverpool need to win every game this season to get where they need to be, then again I can't get behind a triple up, especially at the price that a lot of them are. What do you think of my team?
Phone smashingly interesting. I just kind of, I look at that team. I also look at the fact, loads of the free hits teams going around. They're going to be tripled on United, tripled on Leicester, tripled on Newcastle. And maybe it's reactionary a little bit after Leicester, obviously, not looking fantastic. They're okay, not fantastic. Man United looking pretty abject against Everton of all teams. And Newcastle, you look at all those sort of things and think, well, you're relying on players who aren't particularly motivated at the moment, maybe harking back to last week's pod. And I've seen teams flying around with maybe like Schmeichel in goal. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? At least he's going to be nailed the next 2. Leicester, 7 players rotated this week. Like, we really, really need them out of the Europa Conference League for anything to go on. The same if you're looking at likes of Harvey Barnes, Maddison, Tielemans, something like that in midfield. At the back, maybe you're okay with the Newcastle defence. You have the likes of Shah, Burn, really cheap, cost-effective options, I suppose. And then if you're looking at the likes, Alex Telles, Bruno Fernandes, Ronaldo, if you did watch the game, you've got to be thinking to yourself, are they just in the waiting room now for the season to be over United? Are they just hoisting up the windbreaker, getting those deck chairs out and just kind of thinking, well, all right, I'm done now until next season, until the new manager comes in? It really just felt like there was lack of desire there. I know that's very qualitative, but I find it quite difficult to bat those players. But if you're free hitting, Harry, I suppose you can't not back those players. And if I mean, I don't have any free hits left, but if you have 2 free hits going and maybe you've got a bench boost for 36, it kind of feels like 33 and 37 is the logical way to do it. So you've got to back these teams. And it kind of feels like you're, I guess, hoping for variance to strike, aren't you, this week? Yeah.
And actually, I think the rule that you could play 2 free hits in consecutive weeks was, if that was fine, then I think 37, 38 would be a better use of 2 free hits than playing one in 33 again. Because I think this week you are just sort of hoping for variance to go your way when it could very easily backfire. And, you could bring in Alex Telles, they concede to they concede to Norwich, and then they concede 3 or 4 to Liverpool. It's very possible that he goes and gets nothing in there again. You've got Maddison in there. Maddison and Barnes are an interesting one. With Barnes being benched today, I'm kind of hopeful that he may play both in the double as well as the Europa League. He played 9 games on the bounce before this fixture, and I'm hoping that it means that he can play a fair few on the bounce after his rest. My worry would be Maddison, that he's played a lot on the bounce recently. Would one of those 2 games be the week that Maddison gets his rest? Are we going to see one of those games that they've got Newcastle away, Everton away, that he does the same thing again, especially if they go through in Europe? But even if they don't, they then got Villa at home at the weekend, which is a fairly big game and in theory more difficult than the 2 that go before. So you are just hoping for a bit of variance. That's why I've got a little bit of cover on there. I've got Cancelo, I've got Salah, I've got Kane, because I feel like I'm covering the other side of the variance a little bit. And then I've got 8 double game week players, but it just doesn't feel like you're really maximizing. And I can understand why some free hits have got 11 double game week players, but I could feel like that could just go so horribly wrong and you end up being further behind on a free hit than you were. So it is kind of a a punt and hope it goes well with your free hit this week. If you only have one free hit left this season, I don't think it's the best time to use it. Only if you've got two left, I think, because most of our teams set up this week. If you've got the players that had a good fixture this week or did well this week, in theory, you've got a fine player for next week as well. There's not loads of those double players that I think you should really be fearful of. But that's maybe me hoping, not playing my free hit, that those free hitters don't, that triple United doesn't come back and ruin me. But I can't see it going that way.
I mean, I think it's a really good point to move on to Red Devils, chokers or jokers, based on last week's pod. I mean, I think, as we said earlier on, said last week, sorry, that perhaps they are on the beach now just because fourth place is such a remote possibility. Last week it was kind of remote. This week it is very remote. And based on their performance versus Everton and based on Norwich's performance versus Burnley today, can we look at that and think it's going to be a walkover for United? I think a lot of the free hit tripling up on Man United. I mean, I appreciate a lot of people probably have pulled the free hit. They've got to go for it. United are admittedly fifth non-pen XG this season from all of the teams in the Premier League. It's not too bad at all. They're where you'd expect them to be. And the likes of Bruno, likes of maybe Ronaldo, but there's a lot of fixture congestion, which could mean another player could come in up front, could do a decent job. But it's all predicated on that Norwich fixture. It's all predicated on that doing well, because we're looking at that Liverpool game. So as Harry said earlier, we're looking at that Liverpool game and thinking, well, I'm happy to fill my Liverpool assets in that. I'm happy to have 2 or 3 Liverpool in that, actually, because I think that that's actually going to be more beneficial for me to get Liverpool points there. I mean, can you trust them, Harry, after watching that game versus Everton and Norwich today? And in what world, maybe if you're kind of free hitting, making free transfers or wildcarding in 34, are you more receptive to buying United players? Like, I find it at the moment, like I've had a few plans. I had plans to, buy Jadon Sancho, for example, this week, or I had a plan in place to even get him the likes of Anthony Elanga, because I thought, I'm sure he might end up playing against Norwich, so he could be worth it at 4.8. But in what world are we more receptive to buying Man United players? It just feels like we need to observe the lessons of the likes of Weghorst and Dennis and just think, nah, you know what? I'm good.
I know, and I agree. And actually, to be fair, watching Norwich Burnley today, if Burnley had a few players, and I know it sounds obvious, and I got told off in one of my group chats for stating the obvious, that if Burnley had players who could score goals, they would have scored goals today. But like, if Manchester United, it's a good one, isn't it? It's a top line. But it's true. They could have easily put goals past Norwich. And I feel like, yes, Norwich kept a clean sheet against Burnley today, but I still expect there to be chances for Manchester United in that fixture. But it's because they're so expensive that causes the issue for us. If they were 5-6 mil in line with those Leicester assets, then I would be going, yeah, fine, take a punt on one of them. But it's straight away very difficult to get them in, and they're unreliable for the price that they've got. So I would have to absolutely shoehorn my team. I basically got 2 free transfers, but I basically sacrificed one of them to downgrade like Robertson to a 3.9 defender in order to get Fernandes or in order to get Ronaldo in. So I'm basically sacrificing a transfer, and I just don't think like it's that worth it for me. But again, that Liverpool game, the 3 that I would probably look at, you've probably got Ronaldo, you've probably got Bruno, you've probably got Sancho, Rashford potentially, but after they've just lost to Everton, I find it so difficult to get behind. We all used that game to sort of find the asset that maybe we wanted to go and buy, and all it's done is completely sent me the opposite direction.
Yeah, so it's a failed scouting mission, isn't it, really? I mean, I can equally, like, if you are the sort of person who had the free hit, you kind of earmark this being your free hit week, I can 100% see why you would kind of think, you know what, there's no other option than to go for United. Norwich are second from bottom in terms of expected goals against, non-penalty, that is, throughout the course of the season, and the top for expected goals against, including penalties, throughout the course of this season. So you can look at it and think, well, that's a reasonable punt to make, I suppose. Some guy called Nick, WGTA Nick, I don't know who he is, asked, if you are free hitting on game week 33, would you go without Salah and go with someone like Bruno? I mean, it's obviously, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who's not doing this. So, obviously, neither of us are, Harry. But if you are the kind of person who's doing that, surely Bruno's an auto include, or at least alongside Salah. Maybe that would be the way I'd look at it.
Yeah, if I was on a free hit, I'd own a Manchester United option. But I think it's very easy to do it alongside Salah, alongside Kane on your free hit because of maybe the bench you don't need, because some of these cheaper like Newcastle, Leicester assets that make up the rest of your free hit. Don't think I'd be replacing him. And, if you're wildcarding in game week 34, if we use it in this analogy and you had Salah in your team, I'm not doing Salah to Bruno Fernandes this week. There's absolutely no chance that that's going to be my use of a transfer. So I can't recommend owning Bruno over Salah. But as a, A and a B next to each other in your midfield, I think you do need to try and get a piece of that variance for Manchester United this week. I don't think they're great assets, and we wouldn't be surprised if it goes badly. But, they didn't have any form going into the previous double game week that they had, and Bruno scored his 23 points or whatever it was. There is times in the season where maybe you need to take a piece of that variance that potentially comes through. And I would include one of the attackers, but I wouldn't go, Ronaldo and Bruno at the expense of one of Salah or Kane. I would go with one. I think that's enough.
I kind of felt a bit relieved actually when watching United play and the end result happening. Like if someone like Bruno had managed to get a return, like last week obviously got an assist despite being anonymous the whole game. If there had been another return for somebody like Bruno, somebody like Ronaldo this game, then I think the EO would have rocketed. And I think the next week we'd be looking at a lot of people with those players. I'm sure the EO in the top 10K, top 100K is still going to be pretty high for United players. I think it's going to be quite difficult to dodge that because a lot of people do have free hits remaining and maybe have earmarked it for this week. But I just feel less worried than otherwise I would have. I think that it was always going to be a little bit of a blind spot for me this week because I could fit in a Vegas a couple of weeks ago. For good, that's done me. But I could have fitted him in. It wasn't too much of a problem. But United was always going to be, as you were kind of alluding to, a little bit of surgery was going to be needed. I was going to have to be, making kind of slightly intricate moves, remove a midfielder, move a defender, move a striker, and kind of take a -4 to fit in somebody like a Sancho to try to head off that EO sort of curve. But it just doesn't feel like it's there anymore. It doesn't feel like it's annoying me as much as it otherwise would have. And you look over the last kind of 6 game weeks and their bottom half, comfortably bottom half. I mean, their XG over the last 6 game weeks is worse than the likes of Brighton, Crystal Palace and Southampton. You're looking at that sort of team and thinking, yeah, they've got double game week in front of us. But should I be tearing up my team to be buying one of these players? I'm just not sure that if you're not free hitting, you're going to be too interested in doing it. But in answer to Nick's question, would you be selling a Salah? Maybe not. But if you're wildcarding in 34, Harry, I mean, as you said, you've got to be taking a chance on one player. I mean, would you be looking at a Sancho? Would you be looking at an Elanga? If you can't fit a Bruno or a Ronaldo because their prices are quite prohibitive, is it kind of Sancho? Is that the kind of player that you'll be looking at and thinking, yeah, okay, well, I mean, why not? He's kind of just about gettable.
Yeah, I think if I had to, I wouldn't go Elanga. I know there's a chance he starts against Norwich, but if they have a full week off now, I think that's something with Manchester United that, yes, they have Norwich and there could be a rotation there, but they do have a full week off. I would look at Sancho. But again, I think the big thing, and jumping ahead a little bit here, is the captaincy that comes into it a lot. That if I did have a Bruno in my team, if I did have a Ronaldo or even a Sancho, I would feel comfortable captaining them. And I would feel okay with that Norwich fixture being in there, that they could be a good captaincy shout for this week. However, and this is why when I look at my team, think maybe I do need to get one of them in, because who else do I feel comfortable using my captain on this week? And I think it's a very difficult situation. You look at some of the single game week players that we could potentially go with. And Neil Gupta has asked this as one of the questions, that should we be looking at a Tottenham asset in the form that Kane and Son are in, that maybe we should be going with? Brighton at home is a good fixture, although Brighton just did over Arsenal, that maybe they have found their way off the beach into the car park just at the side of the beach for a little while longer before going back out to tan in the sun. But I still think that I would be looking at a double game week player for this week over the likes of Kane and Son, and just let what happens in that Brighton game happen. But then Leicester assets we saw today, there was a lot of rotation that you run the risk that you end up captaining a single game week player. And if it was a single game week for Leicester versus a single game week for Tottenham, you'd rather the single game week for Tottenham. Then we look at Manchester United and you think Norwich and Liverpool. Well, if we're saying we want to start our Liverpool players against Manchester United, you've then got a Manchester United asset at home to Norwich, or you've got a Tottenham asset at home to Brighton. Again, none of them are really looking like double game weeks that I really want to get behind. If I knew that I had a player that was going to start both games, then I would probably feel comfortable captaining them. But I don't feel like I've got that very much at the moment. Barnes, after his rest, is one that I'm looking at. Newcastle, Leicester and Crystal Palace at home. Chris Wood will probably be in my team. We'll talk about that. Am I really going to captain Chris Wood against Leicester and Crystal Palace? Right. Is that really going to be where I am? Or are we going a bit crazy with that? So I think on the face of it, you think, yes, I'll captain a double game week player. But I think the more and more you break it down, the more and more I think it's not actually that crazy an option given the form that Kane and Son are in at the moment. I don't think come the deadline, my captain will be on Kane or on Kane, but I can understand why you think it's a very decent option. Where's your armband going to be? What do you think about single versus double?
I mean, let's take this one actually and move it up the running order, just because I think the captaincy this week is so not dyed in the wool. I think that's kind of why this double game week is such an unusual one in a lot of ways. And we've spoken about already the fact that a lot of the big teams have a big but attached to them. And in terms of the players as well, you look at them, the ones doubling, and you kind of think, well, am I really going to be going there? I just can't see it, Harry. I really can't. Like, I know my voice is getting very high pitched, but you look at Arsenal, Southampton, and Chelsea. I mean, if the last two game weeks hadn't have happened, or if we'd have managed to sustain some semblance of form, maybe we're looking at going, yeah, Saka, easy captain. Now, do I look at that and think, not sure. I mean, Xhaka was the left back, but Saka has looked a bit gassed recently, unfortunately. Gassed, not gas, as Irish people would say. You got Brighton doubling, Tottenham, Man City. No. Burnley, West Ham, and Southampton. Well, I mean, are you going to be captaining Weghorst? I mean, I honestly, could you captain Pope? Honestly, Leicester, Newcastle, and Everton. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. If they're out of the ECL and they've got nothing else to play for as a professional pride, I mean, that's kind of, you're getting into beachiness there, aren't you? You can feel the sand. I know it's coarse. I know it gets everywhere. But at the end of the day, it could kind of create some sort of good outcome. Newcastle, Leicester, and Crystal Palace. Chris Woods, ASM. Yeah, why not? Shah captain. My Lord, imagine. Southampton, Arsenal, and Burnley. Or you've got Man United, Norwich, and Liverpool. So it becomes a bit of a, if you're dead set, determined to captain a double game week option, you're looking at in the high owned sort of echelons, or at least in the kind of the fashionable players that you'll be interested in captaining, you're looking at maybe Saka, looking at maybe Pope, a try on the likes of Barnes or Maddison, or buying in someone in the United team. I feel like that's kind of it. Like, you wouldn't be captaining Breuer here. I'm not sure that anybody outside of that kind of one guy on Twitter who's going to score 500 points this week, where we've all got our 60s, is going to be sat with the captain on Wood or, Joelinton or something like that. It's a really difficult game week to get a handle on the captaincy, isn't it? And I'm interested to see what everyone's going to be saying when it comes to the Twitter the Twitterate sort of pick, the social sort of pick. That's because there's no clarity. And you kind of, I know you said that, you wouldn't see yourself captaining the likes of Kane, the likes of Son. But for me, I'm looking at him thinking, well, why not captain Kane against Brighton, who before playing an easy team this week in Arsenal were at 6s and 7s, or a team like United for Salah, who have completely lost their way. I mean, that could be worth it. And you go for minutes other than anything else. Like, I'm completely undecided on captain, honestly, Harry. I've got absolutely no idea what I'm doing at the moment. It is bust on Kane. I've got nothing else to add, just because I'm not sure I can convince myself that the likes of Saka or Barnes is worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree. And the only thing that I could say that would sway me towards a double game week captain is hoping that the variance goes in my favor and that you by a double game week player that does really well. It's the only thing in this whole conversation that we've had that favors trying to find a double game week captain. Barnes not playing today. My bus captain is on Harvey Barnes, but I've not been particularly impressed by watching him play. And do I think he's going to start both? Not necessarily. Maybe. Now he's had a rest, but I can't say it with any confidence. So potentially playing one. Why am I captaining Harvey Barnes with 1.5 games over Harry Kane with Brighton at home? So at the moment, I'm finding it very, very difficult to pick. I do think it will be on Harvey Barnes come the end of the week, unless I bring in a Manchester United option, just because the past few weeks have been pretty tough. I'm trying to find that little bit of variance that's gone against me to try and pull it back a little bit, but I cannot blame anyone. And I think that the Tottenham guys should very much be in your consideration because of everything we've spoken about, and that actually a lot of these double game week players are only single game weeks because of rotation or because of the fixtures that they do have.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a split pin captaincy, that's for sure. I think that you'll probably see Salah make it to near 100 just due to everything else people default in that way. Same with Kane. And maybe, as you said, trying to find that one guy, the likes of Barnes, who do come off on that 1 week. That's going to be the key to everything, really. But I mean, there is this dynamic between double game week risks versus those kind of Robin reliance in a single game week. And I think that that's kind of really punctuating our discussion here, isn't it? I mean, FPL Brain really summed it up and said, who are the least bad double game week 33 picks at this point? And it's just quite difficult to look at, just because we spoke last week about copers, jokers, and chokers in terms of how teams are doing the job as we reach the business end of the season. And you look at the likes of Newcastle, you look at the likes of Southampton, look at the likes of Arsenal, and you think, is it better to just focus on the single game week heroes out there? I mean, for me this week, if I'm honest with you, I mean, personal team situation, highly rooted in where I am and what's going on with me. I've got Luca Dean somehow still in my team, the ultimate FPL troll, who again went off injured in a football match with a season-ending thank dog injury, so I had to hold him for the upcoming doubles. So, I mean, for me, I'm looking at selling him for Cancelo this week and removing somebody else. I think it's at Total Tactics, Fran asked what to do with Weghorst. I think I'm going to be selling Weghorst for someone like Mateta, putting him on my bench, and just buying in Cancelo for Dean this week. I mean, that's the kind of point I am at with this double game week. I feel like maybe we've looked at all of these double game weeks throughout the course of the season, and maybe we've gotten to the point now where we look at another subpar double game week coming over the hill and just thinking, that's a monster. Let's just try to avoid it. It's not worth it, is it?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it goes back to captaincy. I think if you've got someone in your team that you're happy to captain, then I don't think you need to be using your transfers to shoehorn in double game week players, and your team will be better off for not doing it. And don't go bringing in, double Newcastle. Look at players who potentially have better fixtures further down the line. Now, if Chelsea go out of the Champions League against Real Madrid this week in that unwinnable tie, there is a small chance that their double against Manchester United gets put in game week 34, but then they would still have Norwich, then Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea with 3 games in a row. And again, that heightens the risk of rotation for that Norwich game even further if that's their run after that. And if that's their run, whereas Salah, for example, has Manchester United this week and Everton next week, again, I don't feel like buying a Manchester United asset, even with a double-double, if that was to happen, not confirmed, of course, at the moment, is a good idea at all. So it comes back to me, find someone that you're happy to captain, find out who that is before making your transfers. If you can get them in easily, then great, move for them this week. And if not, do what's going to benefit your team for the remainder of the season, I think is the easiest way for me to put it. Weghorst, an interesting one. I've got him 50-50 about whether I start him this week. I've got a choice between Weghorst, Odegaard, and Kulusevski, for example, and I can only start probably 2 of them. And I'm finding it difficult where to put on my bench. Do I favor the double game week player and get burnt by Weghorst again? Do I play Kulusevski? Again, it's the same single versus double debate, just on a slightly cheaper price scale. with Kulusevski versus Weghorst versus Odegaard. At the moment, it's Kulusevski on my bench, but after watching today's game, I don't think that's going to be, watching Weghorst today, I don't think that's going to be the case. So again, focus on who you're happy to captain, on who you're confident in. Now, this is a very different group of people for different players, but find that, then focus on your team long term, as you seem to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. There's not very much here to be. Well, hindsight obviously is always a 2020 vision, but from the foresight level, there's not very much here to be getting too excited about. It feels like kind of, our blank game week chat in Game Week 30, where we were saying, yeah, actually, there's not many games to be had. And even taking away from that, at least if you're free hitting Game Week 30, you had the kind of the X-min sort of thing going your way. As it stands, buying in a doubler ahead of somebody, I don't know, like Kulusevski, like Kane, like Salah, like Trent, like Robertson, just kind of feels like you could very easily be punished there. I know they've got extra minutes, but it kind of feels like you're kind of buying in inferior players to replace superior players to try to make a difference. And none of those things make me too confident. But nonetheless, Harry, if you are free hitting this week, who are your absolute essentials?
So if I was on a free hit this week, I would definitely have, I'd probably go Maddison and Barnes. I don't think both is essential, but I would have at least one. I think given their double, I would go with at least one. I would have Bruno Fernandes in there. I would say he would be 100% in my free hit draft. I would have a Newcastle attacker. It would probably end up being Chris Wood because of the lack of forward options that you've got. Again, I don't think that's essential though. And that's from the double game week players, all the ones that I would say you need. I've got Ben White, for example, people looking at Arsenal. Ben White may well end up on my bench this week because I just cannot see a clean sheet for them there against Southampton and Chelsea. I would have Salah in my team. He would be in there. I would have Kane or Son in my team, definitely. And I would have Cancelo in there. And you may even want to add another Man City guy. So I've gone around the houses in terms of positions and players, but not that many of those fall into double game week players. So the double game week players were a Newcastle attacker, probably Chris Wood. They were Bruno Fernandes. They were Barnes and Maddison for the numbers game. And that was the only double game week players that I think are essential on a free hit.
When you're looking at kind of saying, yeah, like you're getting quite close to an even split. I mean, obviously there's 11, but an even split between singles and doubles.
Yeah.
And maybe that kind of speaks to itself and for itself in terms of the level of excitement we have about this kind of double game week ahead of us. I mean, Karam Taizir asks, which three forwards would you look to back in double game week 33? He's got Mopay, lol, Weghorst, lol, and Breuer, lol. They were his lols, not mine, but they could easily be mine. And you've said, Wood, Kane, and I don't know. I mean, the forwards have always been in crisis for quite a while. And you look at that and you just kind of think, well, it's got to be Kane, but if you can get Son, if you've got Son, obviously keep Son now and don't make a move for Kane. It's just actually one of those where the strikers are terrible this week. I mean, if you're on the free hit, Kane, but
they're terrible every week. That's no better this week. But there's also the issue is that there's no defenses that I particularly want to back this week as well. So I can't really play a 4-5-1 or a 5-4-1 even. I kind of feel like I need two forwards because there's enough defenses that I'm not confident in here as well, which is why Kane continues to take precedent in my team over Son because of the team structure. Son competes with a lot of other midfielders, whereas Kane doesn't. So Kane goes in there. And then Chris Wood scored this week. He's got an okay double with 2 home fixtures of Leicester and Crystal Palace. He just about makes it into my team. And he's probably going to end up being a transfer in for me for Watkins, who doesn't have a game. So I would probably go Kane, Wood, and then I would just, pick a cheap player if you're on a free hit. If you have enough money, pick a Breuer, but I probably wouldn't start him. I would just play a 3-5-2. I don't think there's enough value in the forwards. There's plenty of midfielders that you could take a punt on. That the forwards are not great. I would probably go Breuer for my third if I had to.
I feel like more and more we speak about it, more and more I just think, I'm just going to be buying Cancelo in, getting him sorted for the game weeks ahead and just going for it. I mean, you're wild carding in 34, aren't you? So next week. How are you approaching this week then? Because like you're in the same boat as loads of people, I'm sure, out there who aren't free hitting but are looking to just kind of, have a 1 week punt, go for it. Are you just buying in the player now that you're going to want going forward, which is what it sounds like you're looking at? Or are you going to be going for a punt somewhere? Chris Wood, is that your man?
I'm going more on a punt. So if I thought about my free hit team, I had Kane, Salah, and Cancelo as my 3 single game week players. I've got Kane, I've got Salah. I don't think I'm going to be moving for Cancelo this week, as well as I think he could do against Brighton. My defense of currently White, Trent, Robertson, Doherty, playing 3 of those 4. I think I'm okay with that. I'm quite happy with that. I don't expect to be making a defensive transfer. So I do think I'll be using them in my midfield and attack. And I do think I'll be, going for some of those double game week players, because the single game week players in the midfield and attack that I'd want, I can't get to Son. I've got Kane and I've got Salah. So it does leave single game week players out of the question for me. So it does think, okay, I'm going to have to take some punts on some double game week players. And I'm trying to find the ones that I think will play twice. And it's quite as simple as that for me. That's why I'm pretty certain Chris Wood will come in. Fraser, I believe, went off injured for Newcastle. So a bit of a question mark about whether he'll be available for both in game week 33. So that leaves Chris Wood to come in potentially up front. I could look in midfield for Newcastle. I could go Willock, but I think Wood is probably the one. I could go Maximin and hope that he finds a bit of form, because he's actually looked a bit below par, a bit below his explosive self in recent games. So that's why I've gone, again, Chris Wood. And then I look in midfield and think, I've got Odegaard, who, yes, he did a goal this weekend, but how on earth that found the back of the net after a fairly large deflection, I think. I don't expect very much from him with Southampton away, Chelsea away. And I've got Kulusevski currently on the bench. So with my team up on screen for YouTube viewers, but if not, it's currently lined up: Pope, White, Trent, Doherty. Doherty can go to Robertson if he doesn't play. Saka, Barnes, Salah, Odegaard, Kane, Weghorst, Watkins, because Watkins will become Chris Wood, with Kulusevski first on the bench. So right now, I think Watkins to Chris Wood and Odegaard potentially to Maddison, or it could be Kulusevski to Maddison if I want to bench Weghorst. But I don't know. I find it difficult, and I want to see what happens with Leicester in Europe, because that's where I need my midfielder to come from.
Yeah, I mean, we've seemed to have ended up in our transfers and captains here, so I'll just mention mine, I suppose. So I've got Ramsdale in goal. I've got
Matt Doherty
on the bench starting at the moment alongside Robertson and Trent. Although if I remove Luka Dean for Cancelo, obviously he'll end up on the bench and Cancelo will start. In midfield, I've got Barnes, Salah, Martinelli, Saka, and Kulusevski. And up front, I've got Weghorst and Kane. Though Weghorst he's really it's almost one of those where you're kind of like, yeah, I've just got to get rid of this guy now. And I'm very, very glad I don't have a double with 34. I really am, just because I'm not feeling like the FOMO of needing to keep him for appearance points. I think he has to go. I'm happy to pay Breuer this week over him and buy Mateta or something like that, and just think Acuna Mateta on my bench, no worries, and I'll go with the 4-5-1, something like that. It's not amazing, is it? And I think that's kind of a bit of the bottom line really on this game week, isn't it? I mean, I think that a lot of game weeks, double game weeks, that is, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot of different things that could possibly happen, a lot of kind of, ways in which things could shake out. But I mean, I can't remember outside of, the small double game weeks, like Watford, like Burnley, being this underwhelmed by a double game week in a long time. And that's very unfashionable to say. And we have to, in a lot of ways, be like, oh yeah, FPL is amazing. Yeah, it's so exciting. But I look at this double game week, I look at the doublers and just think, the last 2 weeks and this one seem to all be kind of bound up in sort of a sinew of mareness for me, just because it's all about kind of just holding your nerve a little bit and just kind of thinking, well, the real time to strike is going to be 34 onwards. And the last 3 weeks, like as I said at the start, this week I rolled my transfer got a small red arrow. And I'm not too upset about that because I think, well, at least I've got a transfer out of it. And if you look at the haulers this week, like Chris Wood, KDH, those sorts of players. I mean, admittedly, if you've got those players, well done, you've really, really well. Look at the mini league, a few players in that have done very, very well. But it kind of just, I don't know, it doesn't really feel to me to be one of those game weeks where I want to go all out. And I've got a lot of sympathy for people on free hit, that's for sure, because I feel like you're going to end up kind of going for the max variance sort of build and just crossing your fingers really once deadline hits.
Yeah, I think a question that will fire around on Twitter and generally is the comment, how many double game week players do I need? And I think that'll be something that people ask, and they'll be thinking, I've got a team of single game week players, I've only got maybe 5 doublers. Is that enough? And I think for the first time that I think there is no maximum or minimum that you need. I think, again, as we've said, yes, you can have some of these double game week players in here, but if you've got 4 double game week players in your starting 11, for example, and you've got 7 single game week players that come from Liverpool, let's say you've got triple Liverpool, triple Tottenham, that's 6 of them. I do not think you need to go selling these guys in order to bring in single game week players. I think if you've got 4 or 5, for example, just do not worry about it, because the chances are those single game week players have a much higher chance of returning in their single game than any of the doublers have in either of those 2. People are just hoping that over the 2 games that something comes good, but the single game week fixtures and players that we're owning are more reliable than any of these double game week players. So I don't think there's a maximum or even a minimum that we need to have for this week.
It says it all really that, I'm Captain Kane, I'm Vice Salah. And I mean, maybe I could end up kind of siding myself over to Barnes and kind of going, yeah, okay, let's give you the captain this week, Harvey. Try to do something. But that feels like a real shot in the dark, doesn't it? Like I look at 36, where I've got 11 double game weekers. I think I've actually got 12 as it stands already, ready to go. And I think that's going to be the week that I'm very, very excited for what happens. Whereas this week, it just kind of feels like, I don't know, if you're free hitting, if you are kind of making, in your case, the move for Wood, I mean, it doesn't feel like there's that too much, that many scope for gains here, are there? It's just the variance. That's all it seems to be at the moment. Just kind of hoping that you get lucky with a player or 2. And that sounds really defeatist. I know, I'm well aware of that. But no, the more we've spoken about it, the more maybe it's just your demeanor, Harry, and who you are. But I look at it and just think, this is just not a good double game week. I'm just not that excited by it. And maybe, hopefully it's awful, but maybe we'll see something happen in the Champions League, the Europa, whatever's, which mean that we need to make wholesale changes to our team. And then that will inject a bit of interest. But it comes to something, doesn't it, when you look at a game week, a double game week when it comes to it, and thinking, yeah, if an injury happens, that could be the most exciting thing that could underline how this game week goes. I mean, I've got 2 free transfers here. And I genuinely have no idea really what I'm doing, other than thinking, well, I'm going to buy in Cancelo, who's got a single anyway. And maybe that really sums up how this double game week is going to be. Who knows? There could be loads of points on offer. I know there's people who are bench boosting in game week 33. All the best to you. I hope that your team is mostly singlers rather than doublers, because the double is bloody awful. But there we go. And hopefully, next week when you're boring us all about your wildcard, Harry, things will be a bit more exciting, I'm sure.
Had I mentioned that I'm on a wildcard next week?
Oh, no.
I'm on a wildcard for 34. So next pod, I'll be talking a lot about my wildcard in case I hadn't mentioned it. 34 wildcard, book it in. We'll be talking all about it.
I'm not available next week. Joking. All right, cool. I think I genuinely am out of things to talk about for this one. It's not because it's my birthday. It's not because I want to go have a beer now. But I genuinely am out of things to talk about for double game week 33. I know, as I said earlier, that's a bit unfashionable to say. I know it's double game week. I know it should be very exciting. But I just can't. I'm not feeling it. I'm really not.
Yeah, no, I think I'm the same. I think we've concluded that find someone that you're happy to captain, but focus on your team for the long term, as you are doing, bringing in Cancelo, bringing in players you think will benefit your team for the long term. Everton, Leicester potentially, because they double twice later on the season, are probably where I would look if I was trying to benefit my team longer term. But yeah, if you're wildcarding 34, then there are a few punts like me, potentially Leicester again, and Newcastle that I would be looking at. But I think that's about how he summed it up. Cool. So wrapping up, thank you all very much for listening. We were Who Got the Assist. Hopefully we have helped and assisted you at some point in this pod talking about the doubles, although most of the time we've just said all the assets that we want to buy are all rubbish, and the assets that we've currently got are all good. So you shouldn't sell the players that you've got for players that you want. Just keep the players that you've got. But hope it was useful. Good luck in game week 33, the big double when it finally comes around. Next week we'll be back recording on Monday after the Easter weekend.
Cool. Yep, it's my birthday this Tuesday, so I will be kind of incommunicado for a little bit. Looking forward to a small break, because this is like, one of the few game weeks, I think one of the very last ones in this whole sort of end catalogue, where I can kind of relax and just kind of not think about FPL for a little while. And as we've alluded to, I mean, there's only so much you can flog a dead horse. I'm very, if people do go on and record 2-hour podcasts about this game week, good luck to them. There's not very much we can do about it. I hope we assist you somehow look at this double game week ahead, and all the best with your free hits if you're doing them. All the best with your transfers, and all the best for everything else. Hope we assist you, and we'll speak to you very, very soon. We're back next week. Goodbye.